Two. Holiday swings and misses, strike three, and that for Tim Lincecum is his 252nd strikeout.
You think about this guy, he's not only got that fastball, but when you're sitting on that, all of a sudden comes a big hook in the change.
If you weren't there to witness it yourself, it may be hard to understand.
Number 9 for Lincecum, that curveball and the fastball, an awesome combination.
His numbers outstanding in every way. This is where he ranks in the National League. First in strikeouts, first in win percentage, first in opponents batting average.
The words mystic and phenomenal come to mind.
Strike three, he did it. A fastball, he blew it by him at 95 miles an hour. And Tim Lincecum gets it done.
But somehow it all came crashing down quicker than anyone could have imagined.
Just said, the good work put up by Lincecum leaves this game with an injury.
And he stumbles, and that's ball 4.
That's the third time he stumbled on this mound tonight, and that one very costly.
That's what's been going on the last few years, and try to move on, try not to live and dwell in the past. And I've had some success in the last 4 years, and a lot of not. So
Join me in reliving the meteoric rise, the ceilingless peak, and the ultimately rapid downfall of Tim Lincecum. February 12th, 2010. A group of lawyers sit alongside the general manager and a number of front office folk, all with the San Francisco Giants. Not long ago, this baseball team offered their star pitcher, Tim Lincecum, a new contract of $8 million a year. This number would be way up from his measly $650,000 salary he was currently taking home, but Timmy thought he was worth something more towards maybe $13 million a year. So now both sides have to meet to negotiate and try to agree on something, or else they'll have to go through the arbitration process, which often doesn't end well for anyone. So we sit and we wait for Tim to show up. Ah, here he is now, coming through the door, and he's carrying something. What? Oh boy. Tim Lincecum has arrived with the 2008 and 9 NL Cy Young Awards both in hand, both with his name carved at the bottom. The Giants, with their bluff seemingly called, smartly forked over some money, and Tim happily walked away with a 2-year, $23 million contract. And of course, both his Cy Youngs. Before he was an absolute negotiation boss and a generational pitching talent though, he was just a shaggy-haired Seattle kid. Okay, he was born in Seattle in the 80s, draw it up however you want. The kid liked grunge music. I mean, this explains his future hairstyles perfectly. Tim, who his teammates would eventually refer to as the Freak, or the Franchise, or the Freaky Franchise, or of course, Big Time Timmy Jim, well, he was a normal kid. I want to focus mostly on that glorious stretch of prime from Tim's career, but we can spark notes our way through his early childhood up to the MLB. Timmy was born to pretty average parents. May surprise you that he's Filipino, but there was no crazy signs of an MLB career, and if you know Tim Lincecum, you know there wasn't any special genealogy he had either. His most noteworthy achievement as a child is probably being distantly related to famed actress Natalie Wood through his father. And it was also through his father that Tim would learn how to pitch a baseball, and over his high school years, he would get pretty damn good at it. His pops would film the games, then bring them home, and they would analyze them together, perfecting Tim's form and release. The part to remember here is him and his dad would tweak his throwing motion in whatever way they could think, doing anything possible to make up for Tim's small size and get more speed on the ball. He started thrusting his hips in his pitch, and by going overhand in a tomahawk motion, he would have gravity on his side too as he flung all of his momentum into the pitch. But often, him and his dad were doing things a pitching coach would not like. The results weren't to be denied though. Tim was drafted out of high school to the Cubs, but he opted to go to college and play at the University of Washington. 3 years of dominant pitching, and he was right where he belonged, in the MLB. He was taken 10th overall in 2006 by the Giants, and he probably should have gone higher, Most could agree he was special, but he had a couple detractors that pushed him to the very edge of the top 10. The first was his size. Tim Lincecum's listed at just 5'11", and that's a generous measurement. Just as bizarre, he weighed 170 pounds through his prime. The guy was pure skin and bones, somehow producing the power to launch 99-mile-per-hour projectiles. And on top of a weak frame, Tim Lincecum had developed a number of bad habits, so to say, in his pitching motion. Him and his dad were unwilling and even called stubborn when asked to change any part of Tim's mechanics, no matter how unorthodox they were for being a pro pitcher. And this rubbed some teams the wrong way. Now, who am I and who is anyone to tell Tim Lincecum he's pitching wrong, but this is just what the so-called experts said. It was the Giants, though, who ended up taking the chance and grabbing Lincecum among a pool of talented players drafted right around him. Tim didn't get a lot of time pitching in the minors because, guess what, he didn't need it. He pitched 94 innings over a couple years, going 8-0, and gave up just 13 total runs. He struck out 30.9% of the batters he faced, which was the highest ratio the minor leagues had seen in over 10 years. When San Francisco called him up, it was mid-2007. The Giants were not a very good baseball team, and the season was highlighted by Barry Bonds' trek to the all-time home runs record, which he would eventually hit. There was some hype for Tim Lincecum, but no one expected anything too crazy. The team won just 71 games and fell far short of success. Barry Bonds announced his retirement would start after this season, and the San Francisco Giants looked to be entering a new era. But among all that outside noise, Tim quietly had a good rookie season. He went 7-5, made the all-rookie team with an ERA that almost squeaked below 4. I just don't think anyone yet knew that this rookie, stoner-looking kid would be the one to pioneer the Giants through this new era that was coming. 2008, second season in the league, and old Timmy pulls a Dan Marino on us. Right here, his prime begins on the thumbnail, and right here, Tim takes the city of San Francisco into his hands. The 24-year-old won 18 games. He led the league in strikeouts, adjusted ERA, wins above replacement, the whole shish kebab. Everything was trending up in 2008. Except houses. It was one of the most out-of-nowhere domination seasons by a pitcher in MLB history, and it earned him the Cy Young Award in the National League in his second pro year. The team improved by just a game after the loss of their megastar, which was about how they were expected to perform, but their new star was on the bump, and he'd already earned the nickname around town of the franchise. Yet still, a lot of people sort of overlooked this season. It was seen as little more than a one-off, another great season of pitching to be forgotten by time, buried in a mediocre team that does nothing and goes nowhere. I mean, how could Tim Lincecum really keep this up? Then he did it again. 2009, his ERA drops to below 2.5, leads the league in strikeouts again. Pitching in the same room as Randy Johnson this year, Tim learns from him, but he lets the bird murderer know whose team this is by reeling in his second consecutive Cy Young. The team really starts to turn things around too, shocking many in the process. The Giants laughed past their projections of 75 wins to just barely miss the playoffs. And it's funny in retrospect, but from a 2009 point of view, this team was only sort of starting to just give a little bit of warning signs off of what was to come. This article poking into their surprising 2009 season just makes me chuckle, highlighting a farm system that could be decent, full of guys who would just dominate the league over the next 6 years. And of course, the engine was led by the Cy Young winner. Tim had become a member of this extremely exclusive list of those to win back-to-back Cy Young awards, including his teammate, and the future seemed bright. You can use excuses for one great season, but when lightning strikes twice, you shut up and watch. And no one, probably not even the Giants players, could have dreamed how far they were about to go. This is when the contract negotiation I opened with took place, so needless to say, Tim was feeling pretty good about himself. In this 2009 offseason, he also had an arrest that managed to somehow boost his reputation among fans. One lackadaisical day, Tim Lincecum was pulled over speeding and cited for a small amount of marijuana and a pipe in his car. And because of course it did, this incident blew up in the media, with fans coming to the defense of the lovable Timmy Jim. His presence in the sport was trending upwards heavily. He now had some popularity to go with his domination. 2010. In the 2 years prior, Tim had pitched excellent baseball, but was just kind of a chiller off the diamond. He was a quiet guy and he hadn't exploded yet. His reputation was just sort of steadily growing among MLB and Giants fans with all these wacky things he was doing. But it was time to change that. Entering this season, you gotta remember, the Giants baseball team has been in San Francisco for 52 years and have 0 World Series to show for it. That doesn't exactly create the most eccentric pride from a city for their ball team, and this team hadn't even made the playoffs in 7 years. You look back and question how those young Giants players were written off, but we gotta realize there was no reason to think they would succeed. The team had not competed in a minute. And that's why it absolutely set the baseball world on fire. Tim racked up 16 more wins in his 3rd straight All-Star appearance, led the league in strikeouts for the 3rd year in a row on what was a bit of a down year. But the Giants won 92 games, taking the division and taking the league by storm. And this meant Tim Lincecum got some playoff action. As the team's ace, he started Game 1 of the NLDS, his first career playoff game, and the Giants' first playoff game in 7 years. And Timmy, he balled the hell out. Complete game, 14 strikeouts, and a 2-hit shutout. Tim's first playoff game was that of legends. The Giants waltzed through the first round of the playoffs. Tim didn't need to start again. The man was at the top of the world as the Giants sealed the Braves' fate in the playoffs, winning the series 3-1. In Game 4, as the Giants won and celebration ensued, we get a very special moment in the development of Tim Lincecum. I know we're 2 Cy Youngs and half of his prime down, but I truly believe this very moment is where Tim Lincecum shot himself into San Francisco legend. Taking an interview in the dugout, knowing damn well he was on live television, Timmy let all his emotions out honestly. That single F-bomb ignited something in San Franciscans that night. I couldn't tell you what. Everyone knows you're on TV. Keep it cool. Then there's Tim just putting it all out there. There were countless people discussing this. It was everywhere. Like, do you want some proof? Lincecum! Fuck yeah! And so this is the moment I would choose to pin down when Tim became the hero. This city, finally with an on-field product they were proud to stand behind, collectively realized they had a 2-time Cy Young winner to rally behind and love in his prime. Let's have some fun here. And they did. Tim won Game 1 against the Phillies too. After he lost Game 5, the Giants were able to get the job done in 6, sending the team back to the World Series. This team was looking to make history. They were looking to bring the city its first trophy and had all the support in the world, San Francisco and beyond. This was a group of underdogs, lovable, popping up out of nowhere guys. Their new catcher, this Buster Posey guy, what kind of name is that? He won Rookie of the Year and he was exhilarating to watch. The team didn't even make the playoffs last year and now they had a chance to win it all. How could you root against it? Against a strong Rangers team, this World Series was never in doubt for the favored San Francisco Giants. Timmy started 2 games, won them both. Gave up 8 total runs, but Game 5 to seal the deal and put a ring on his finger, this was some classic heyday Tim Lincecum domination. 8 innings pitched, 3 hits, and 1 run allowed in a World Series clinching game. This capped Tim's playoff run at 4-1 with a sweet, beautiful ring to go on top of it. These playoffs, they started and ended at Tim Lincecum's hand, at his mere beckon. He was awarded the Babe Ruth Award for the most valuable player of the whole playoffs after his multiple stellar big-time performances. San Francisco, well, they were a city in love with their baseball team now. They waited patiently for this, and it was celebration time. Tim Lincecum was their boy who had just become their man. He was embraced and loved like few baseball players ever are by a city, and this is somehow just the beginning. Going into 2011, we do have to acknowledge that Tim's going into his 5th season, but unfortunately he's already peaked as a major league pitcher, according to personal statistics at least. Now, it was an odd year. Don't ask me, but something was going on in San Francisco. When the calendar hit an odd year, I mean, they were cursed or something. The Giants missed the playoffs, just outright. They went from out of the playoffs to world champions and right back to their couch in a 3-year span. Tim's season wasn't outstanding, but there's nothing to scoff at. He dipped below 500 for the first time in his career, but remember, odd year. He doesn't control that. It was a virus, I'm telling you. He still tossed over 200 strikeouts, he got his ERA back under 3, and he was an all-star again, his 4th straight, and still just 27 years old. At this point, at this rate, Tim Lincecum was starting to etch his name into the Hall of Fame conversation. And to any sensible fan watching this guy, he was sure to be heading that way and to become a Hall of Fame lock soon. 2012, what's that number? It's even. Good news for Tim. Well, I guess not. Tim had his worst season to date, no question. While the Giants got back on track, Timmy lost his all-star streak and threw a 5.1 ERA. He still got his same 33 games started. That was scarily consistent no matter his performance, but it just wasn't awesome. However, the Giants got into the playoffs, and with Timmy Jim, well, that's all you gotta do. There's a reason they call him Big Time. Tim was no longer the ace of the squad. Madison Bumgarner was starting to pick up heat, and Matt Cain, who threw a perfect game this regular season, had also jumped him in the rotation. But the Giants' 2 main pitchers both lost to the Reds in the first round of the playoffs. With the Giants down 0-2 in a best-of-5 series, they stormed back to win 3 straight on the road, clinging to life and stealing the series 3-2. In Game 4, Tim didn't start, but he worked a majority of the load, and he got the win in an elimination game, allowing just 2 hits and a run through 4 innings of work. He struck out 6 of the 15 batters he faced, and it really didn't matter if this was an off year for Tim in the regular season. The man was just as dominant when it mattered. In the NLCS, it was the Cardinals, and again, the Giants came out slow. Mad Bum and Matt Cain both lost again, followed up by a rare Tim Lincecum playoff loss. Before you knew it, the Giants were down 3-1. They're back to the fence yet again. Of course, this team had some magic in them. They came back again and somehow squeaked their way into a World Series. Who the hell are these guys? Miss the playoffs, win the World Series, then do it again. Yeah, that's basically it. 2 times might not even be enough, actually. The Giants walked through the Tigers in the World Series. They had enough sweat just getting there, and they swept their way to another ring. Unfortunately for Tim, it was a sign of the changing times. Just 2 years ago, he was the World Series Game 1 starter and took home 2 wins in the Fall Classic. This year, he failed to get the nod to start a single game in the World Series. He got some relief time in Games 1 and 3 and pitched great as the Tim we know on the big stage. I don't know what it was, because Tim was still dominant whenever he was out there. He tallied 8 strikeouts in just 4 innings. Playoff Timmy Jim hadn't left, but there was an entire rotation of respectable pitching talent that Tim started to fall behind. As tough as it is, with more still in front of this team, Tim Lincecum's prime was over. I choose to say it ends right after 2012 because even though he was already on his way down this season stat-wise, Tim still pitched a couple more playoff games excellently, like the big-time Timmy Jim we know. Sadly, those games were the last bit of greatness that was left in the tank. 2013 was about as bad as last year, but with no playoff success at the end to make up for it. this was just where we were now. The real dagger is that he cut his hair. I mean, obviously dropped off, what did he expect? As I said, the greatness was still in him. It could flash, but he couldn't hold it for consistent long periods of time. It did flash on July 13th though, when he threw his first career no-hitter, just out of nowhere, against the Padres. Unfortunately, that wasn't how the rest of the season went. Father Time was starting to win this battle. The Giants missed the playoffs altogether, then won the World Series the next year, completing their odd pattern. Tim no-hit the Padres again in 2014 for 2 in 2 years, but again it was buried among starts that were average at best. It had to be a bullet of reality when he didn't start a single playoff game this year. Even in a World Series that went to 7 games this time, he was used for just 3 total innings, leaving one of them with an injury. This was Mad Bum's team now, and he was out there doing exactly what Tim used to do, maybe even better. Tim still got his ring this year, and that's awesome, but if his career was going downhill right now, it was about to completely fall off a cliff. Remember how Tim really thrusts his hips hard to throw and kinda does stuff pro coaches wish he wouldn't do? Well, in the end, Tim and his dad were right. They can laugh at every coach with his 2 Cy Young awards and know that their way worked. But it did come back to get him eventually and definitely sped up the end stages of his career. He had a degenerative condition in both his hips that required a procedure in 2015. It ended his season early, and with his contract ending after the year, San Francisco saw no need to re-sign him. The guy that was utterly beloved by the city he helped bring hardware to, and they let him walk without a care. It's a cruel business. He had a 2016 stint with the Angels that we don't really need to talk about, and he tried to make it back into the league, but that was it. It was over. The freak was done playing ball, in part because of his freaky, unorthodox way of pitching, and he retired. His career to live on is this sort of magic in a bottle. He popped up out of nowhere and was purely unstoppable, pioneering what would go on to become an MLB dynasty. His name teleported onto lists of the best pitcher in the league overnight, yet his downfall from stardom would come just as quick and out of left field as his rise to it did. Tim Lincecum is the only MLB player to ever win 2 Cy Young awards in his first 3 seasons. Only one over any pitcher you can name. He's the only player with 2 Cy Youngs and 3 World Series wins in his first 6 years in the league, yet Tim Lincecum won't make or even sniff the Hall of Fame. And it's for one simple reason. He didn't play good for long enough. Not nearly long enough. And as badly as I wanted to make a case for him, have this video serve as why he should make the Hall of Fame, I can't. He just didn't do enough for me to be able to honestly tell you that and maintain credibility. Tim Lincecum was so good in his prime. Anyone who wrote about him said he was on a Hall of Fame track, or even better than that. But the MLB Hall of Fame, more so than any other pro sports league probably, is extremely reliant on longevity. There's no minimum number of strikeouts or wins that you need, but no pitcher has ever gotten the vote with less than 2,000 innings pitched, and Tim didn't even throw 1,700. At his very best, Lincecum was better than pitchers in the Hall of Fame ever were at their best, but he simply didn't do enough for long enough. And Timmy just wasn't quite jaw-dropping or transcendent enough to get the Sandy Koufax treatment, aka get in the Hall of Fame, even though you had a short career because you were just that damn good that they had to let you in. Maybe you've forgotten all about him, and this video was your first time hearing the name Big Time Timmy Jim since 2014. But I'll tell you with a strong level of confidence that San Francisco will never forget, and the greater MLB world will never forget the unique grip that Tim Lincecum had on baseball and on his city in his one-of-a-kind, legendary prime. Thank you.
Hey, this is the freak. I'm not on my desk right now. No. Hey, this is the franchise. Franchise? That's arrogant. Hey, this is the freaky franchise here. Big time Timmy Jim's office here. No one even calls me that. Hi, this is Tim Lincecum. If you leave your name, number, and a short message, I'll be sure to get...
Hey, big time Timmy Jim, what's up?